Tonight, IPA officially launches its online registry system. And a further analysis on the 2014 national budget.
Education, health, infrastructure.
Good evening. I'm Leanne Jarari. Welcome to the program. Last Friday, the Investment Promotion Authority officially launched its online registry system. The new service has been one of IPA's milestones so far, providing high-quality, fast and efficient services online to its clients.
Company lodgements and registrations can now be done online. The Investment Promotion Authority officially launched its new online registration and database system last Friday. IPA staff and management, together with government officials and members of the Diplomatic Corps, were joined by the Minister for Trade, Commerce and Industry, Richard Maru, to launch the authority's online registry system. The online system will provide fast and efficient services to IPA clients, enabling them to register new companies, reserve business names, and submit company lodgements through the internet. The public will also be able to conduct company searches for free using the system as opposed to paying a company search fee as it was in the manual system. The situation is considered a win-win for both IPA and its clients, as it saves money and time, as well as a total of 3 million kina per year for the Investment Promotion Authority.
When we started this, we simply wanted to ensure that our registration processes are simplified. It was our attempt to try and make it easy for our clients to lodge documents, both new registrations as well as file statutory documents.
Also signed last Friday was a Memorandum of Understanding between IPA, the Internal Revenue Commission, as well as PNG Customs on their move towards setting up an online one-stop shop for businesses. This platform is proposed to cater for registrations, lodgements together with tax submissions. The directive of the memorandum is to have a common online platform that will serve not only as a lodgement system, but as a taxation center as well. This plan has been done primarily to help minimize the issue of tax evasion by certain registered entities.
Our government is extremely keen to make it more and more easier for doing business, and we also want to move into one-stop shops for doing business to make it easier for business. The Prime Minister has issued instructions yesterday that apart from this project, the next big project we desire is to have a one-stop shop where you lodge and file returns in the same office that you also register to pay taxes to the country. This is a project that we want launched by July, the 1st of July next year.
Minister Maru has set July 2014 as the target date for the launching of this online registration and taxation platform.
Still to come, the 2014 budget was passed exactly a week ago. It's a 15 billion kina budget and is the biggest budget ever to be passed by Parliament. That's next. Good evening and welcome back to the show. This week, we continue our analysis of the 2014 budget. As like any other budget to be tabled before Parliament, there has always been some debate and opposition to it. Treasury Minister Don Pollier, however, still maintains that the deficit budget is the best budget ever in the history of Papua New Guinea. Dennis Herrera with this report.
The record 2014 budget of 15 billion kina was passed last Tuesday by Parliament.
Education, health, infrastructure.
According to the front page story of The National last Wednesday, the budget was passed at 7:15 p.m. last Tuesday night, straight after opposition leader Belden Nama had strongly criticized it as not for the people of this country. The article stated that there were 92 MPs in the House during the vote for the 2014 budget, including 3 opposition members led by Nama.
Mr. Speaker, 2014 budget was described as the people's budget, but this is not true. I say it is a contractor's budget, Mr. Speaker. I quote the Treasurer, Honorable Don Pollier, who said we are the custodians of our people. But if that is the case, the current coalition government has not led by example.
The article went on in stating that Treasurer Don Pollier described the budget as not the best, but the biggest and the best in PNG's history.
Let me pick on a point that the good opposition leader made mention that this budget is not much different from what was structured last year. Mr. Speaker, that is not a new case, Mr. Speaker. As we came to our budget last year, the Treasurer handed down a budget that depicted a medium-term approach, a budget that was part of a series of budgets that will culminate in us coming back to a surplus, a moderate surplus in 2017.
Infrastructure will be getting the biggest share of the 2014 budget, with an allocation of 2.7 billion kina, including 769 million kina in donor funding.
You are going to mark the angles?
1.5 billion kina has been allocated to the education sector in the 2014 budget, with 605 million kina for free education. In 2014, total funding for all agencies in the health sector will be 1.4 billion kina. Funding in this sector will support the upgrade and redevelopment of 16 existing hospitals. The law and order sector will receive funding of 1.3 billion kina in 2014. The police department will continue to receive funding through its police modernization program, with 69 million kina allocated for 2014. Total funding for the economic and agriculture sector is 777.9 million kina in 2014, of which 302 million kina is set aside for the agriculture and small to medium enterprises package. The rest of the allocations will be used in other areas. Prior to the passing of the budget in Parliament, a budget debate was held last Tuesday morning at the Royal Papua Yacht Club in Port Moresby. During the discussion, Country Manager for Talisman Energy, Richard Kasman, pointed out the issue of budget deficit.
So the government needs to come out, Treasury, it's incumbent on Treasury to explain this longer-term issue of the deficit and what it's trying to achieve.
Mr. Kasman said that the government needs to come out and explain its longer-term deficit and what it aims to achieve. He said he had been talking to a whole range of Papua New Guineans since the tabling of the 2014 budget last Tuesday, and the general perception is that people think mismanagement and corruption when they hear of a deficit budget.
Because what I'm finding is a lot of our people are thinking deficit mismanagement, and and it adds a lot of weight in the perception of poor governance, corruption. It inhibits energy, enthusiasm, and innovation amongst our people.
Sustained growth through prudent investments.
Minister Pollier stated when tabling the budget last month that there will be a 2014 budget deficit of around 2.3 billion kina, or around 5.9% of GDP. The proposed deficit will raise the government's debt-to-GDP ratio to 35% in 2014, consistent with the Medium-Term Fiscal Strategy 2013 to 2017 and the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2006. According to an article in The National last Wednesday, opposition leader Belden Nama said in Parliament that the PNG economy will experience more problems because the debt level will go beyond the 35% debt level forecast, as the government needs to source financing from outside to finance the deficit of around 6%. Nama said the budget has failed to factor in falling commodity prices. He said the gold prices are expected to remain stagnant, and the deficit is expected to increase and continue to influence future budgets because government revenue will be less.
It's incumbent upon Treasury and other commentators to continue to emphasize to our people that this is a planned deficit. There's a reason for that.
More on the 2014 national budget when we return. Stay with us. Welcome back to Business PNG. The 2014 national budget is a multi-year budget. This, a first for the country, sets out in advance fiscal limits for the forward estimate years of 2015 to 2018. However, commentators and critiques still maintain that implementation and the government's move to tighten up on taxes still remain a challenge. 2014 national budget is a multi-year budget. This, a first for the country, sets out in advance fiscal limits for the forward estimate years of 2015 to 2018. However, commentators and critiques still maintain that implementation and the government's move to tighten up on taxes still remain a challenge.
The 2014 budget was debated upon last Tuesday morning by Acting Director for the National Research Institute, Dr. Charles Yala, Country Manager for Talisman Energy, Richard Kasman, Country Economist for the Asian Development Bank, Aaron Batten, and ANZ PNG CEO, Mark Baker.
I mean, I think no real surprises, really a continuation of what we saw from last year. The key thing, I think, it's really been drawn out by Aaron's presentation there, is just around execution.
The implementation issues are big, but I think it was slightly refreshing in this year's budget lockup where all three ministers, Finance, Planning, Treasury, also highlighted implementation as the key challenge. There seems that wasn't there last year. There was a big focus on the financing, and for the first time they really seem to be getting their heads around the fact that this money isn't being spent and that it's not delivering what they've been promising. So I think there is some momentum there from them.
Among the many issues discussed, free education was brought up, with Dr. Yala saying that free education is not the only issue in education.
Good for our future. And therefore,
according to the Department of Education, 1,557,916 students were enrolled at all government-run schools in the country in 2010. When the free education policy was implemented by the government in 2012, student enrollment rose by 246,042, bringing the total number to 1,803,958. Dr. Yala said there are other issues such as poor infrastructure, lack of qualified teachers, and quality of education curriculum.
Getting the entire package is clear. School fee is only one deterrent. So if you free up school fee, that does not directly translate to access. Because if there's no classrooms, if there are no teachers, if there are no desks, quality falls, will that child continue to grade 4? Yes, you've pumped up at grade 1. What happens at grade 5? What happens at grade 6? Will there be classrooms to take this right through? So at the primary, secondary, all the way up to tertiary. So education has to be taken seriously in that multi-prolonged approach.
Other issues regarding the 2014 budget were also highlighted, including the Central Supply and Tenders Board process, the collection of taxes, and implementation.
The government said the enablers are infrastructure, education, and health. And then some impetus to smaller business too. So these expenditure is necessary to then enable, trigger some developments in these other areas. So that's what the government's intention is, and I think it's important on the government to continue to explain this to our people.
The 2014 budget is a multi-year budget, which is the first of its kind for the country ever since independence. The budget sets out in advance the fiscal limits for the forward estimate years of 2015 to 2018. According to Director for NRI, Dr. Thomas Webster, multi-year budget cycles recognize an attempt to address deficiencies of trying to implement single-year budget cycles, leading to poor implementation and worse, loss of funds. Dr. Webster said through an NRI commentary last week that inability to spend funds towards the end of the fiscal year sees as credible to spend cash warrants on unbudgeted items or sometimes transferred to trust accounts at the end of the year. He said for the practice to be appreciated and benefits realized, it needs to be continued and sustained over many years.
Don't go away. When we return, we feature discussions from the 2013 Deloitte's budget debates. Deloitte and POM-CCI hosted the budget debate last week. Throughout the debate, some of the issues and the challenges surrounding the 2014 national budget were highlighted. Here's David Kahn with the interview.
After our very successful Deloitte Port Moresby Chamber 2014 budget debate, and I'm joined in the studio for some further commentary on budget 2014 by Richard Kasman, the country manager for Talisman Energy, and with him Dr. Charles Yala, the director of the National Research Institute. Gentlemen, welcome, and thank you for your input to budget 2014 debate this morning. I asked you, and Richard, you talked about it, this issue of another deficit budget. What does Papua New Guinea, is it worrying Papua New Guinea? Another deficit budget, 2.7, this time 2.3. Okay, it's going down and it's within the parameters of the fiscal management, the Fiscal Revenue Act. But is it worrying people on the street? Are they seeing what it's all about?
The short answer is no, they're not seeing what it's all about, and it is worrying our people. And even though the Treasurer did come out last year and did inform the people that we were looking at a budget now is going to track over a 5-year period. We're going to have deficits for 3 to 4 years, yes. And then after 3 to 4 years, it will go back to surplus budgets. The Treasurer did actually explain that to our people. But this is a difficult concept to appreciate. And the point I made this morning in talking to Papua New Guineans about this and at all various levels is they were saying, is this deficit a consequence of corrupt government? And
it's not.
And it isn't. And that's why I said this morning that it's incumbent upon Treasury and other commentators to continue to emphasize to our people that this is a planned deficit. There's a reason for that, and the key focus areas of
it's a bit like
government.
Taking a loan against future funds to do something we need to do now.
Very
and that something is infrastructure.
He said, the government said the enablers are infrastructure, education, and health. And then some impetus to smaller business too. So these expenditure is necessary to then enable, trigger some developments in these other areas. So that's what the government's intention is, and I think it's important on the government to continue to explain this to our people time and time again, because the effect of this perception about corruption really paralyzes people, Dave. Yeah. It makes them angry, and it paralyzes our people.
It's not a hard link to make. I mean, I drive in every day from 17 Mile, and have we gone into debt to build the Irma to 9 Mile Road? Yeah, we have. So people here in the city, I guess, believe it. I mean, by the same token, I'll go to Alata on the weekend and they're fixing the road out on the East Cape. And they're not doing it just for me, by the way. I mean, so people need to connect to realise what we're doing. Yeah.
That's so important, and so important that we need to borrow money to build these projects.
Yeah. Do you think it's a government borrowing too much? That would be another concern people would have?
I think the government, the borrowing at the moment is all right. And the reasons why they are borrowing is also all right. It's, well, the commentators said today, and it's Richard and we all agree, they're putting it to infrastructure. And key point is that we have never maintained some of this infrastructure for years. The economy is also growing. We need to expand and to modernize and to get. Look at Port Moresby, for example. These ring roads that the government is funding now, they're inevitable. That's what has to happen. From Port Moresby to
I know they're inevitable. I sort of raised the point the other day that isn't everybody coming to Moresby? I mean, nobody's going round it. They all want to come here. So is it? Why don't you just build a road right into the middle of it?
Well, and then you also have the LNG on the other side.
Yes, yeah.
Now, that brings in a very important issue about proper urban planning and development, because some of these roads we are talking about are big infrastructure programs that must be the basic trunk roads in years to come.
Yes.
And that's why proper scoping and planning and development in the context of urban areas, we need proper planning up front, not just putting big roads that then ends up nowhere in few years down the line.
We'll come back to an issue I know that's very dear to your heart, what's going to happen around those roads and the issues of land and settlement. We'll come back to that though, but I mean, it's a good connect that the PIP and the recurrent budget are linked together. So there's a last thought about, let's not just build these facilities, let's provide for maintenance. So that's a good thinking.
Yeah. And more importantly, the planning of that. And if I could quote what Aaron Batten from ADB said this morning, away from that former policy of build, neglect, and then rebuild. And that's what we used to do. and we are doing, and that's where our planning was all about. So this important, now that we've combined those budgets, point that you raised earlier, Charles, was also this thinking. So we've got, we can plan a longer term. It's going to take us so many years to build a new road, but we're also doing this maintenance planning. So when it comes to...
So it's not falling apart behind us. Yeah,
correct. But the point I wanted to make, Dave, was that so we need to explain to the departments that you don't have to rush your expenditure now in November and December and just spend wastefully, because there is this process in our budget. So departments need to understand that we can go for this longer period of time, including with some of that recurrent maintenance spending.
And perhaps so we have a new way of thinking about contracting as well. So when someone wins a contract, I mean, I was speaking to some overseas contractors and I said, so what would you think if we gave you a contract to build this particular road and gave you a maintenance contract for 10 years? And they went, oh, we'd love it, you know. Then we've mobilized, we leave some of the plant on, you know. We've done, we could make money like that, and that could link to this concept of doing it.
Yes, David, I agree with it and I support it, and I sort of wrote about it some time ago on this issue, and I think this will have to be taken up in 2014 through this procurement review process.
Yes, yes.
So we seriously look into of course, a transparent and accountable process for delivering the contract, because these projects will inevitably require highly skilled companies with different pools of people to really drive it. And when it comes to the maintenance, if we can get, building on from this multi-year budgeting thing, we also build multi-year, this kind of contract things where you build, but for the next 10 years, you will also have the maintenance contract. That allows the companies to think long term and invest long term here as well, that this is my road. And also different companies will demonstrate and the public will see. And we can put it up on the internet, we can make it public that from here to here is this company is going to maintain for the next whatever. So I think this is an issue that the government needs to take it up, or the public needs to support the government in the procurement review that's going on at the moment.
I think this cuts also to a major point I saw this morning. This, I mean, I actually quoted from the Deloitte Budget Alert, this perennial disconnect between, you know, funding and the actual implementation. And I know Richard and I were talking about it with Aaron Button. I mean, you know, so where does the Department of Works reside in that operation? I mean, will they become supernumerary? They just issue the contractor goes out. Where do we get down to the brass tacks of training our own road engineers, our own officials? I mean, because someone's still going to have to supervise that, supervise the contract, supervise the maintenance of it. And at the moment, we just hire a consultant?
Yeah.
Is that the way forward, Richard?
Aaron's one of his slides this morning, with respect to looking at the capacity, the budget spent, the comparison of budget on capacity and resources in the Department of Works over the last 10 years. So 10 years ago it was closer to 20%, and now it's down as low as 3 to 4% of the expenditure, and therein lies our problem. And clearly we need that capacity of Department of Transport to be enhanced so that we can supervise. We cannot rely on private sector to maintain standards. That is a recipe for failure.
Well, that's self-regulation, and it's not going to work.
It's failed. It's failed us completely. And so that's glaring. And his other slides, which show that in the infrastructure budget, we had a focus of a budget of $6 billion. And I took note of it, and then we revised it in 2013 to 4.2 billion in this year of implementation, and this is where this point is important. Then they looked at warrants that we issued, which in November, which was 3.5 billion, and then they looked at actual expenditure in November 2013, which is 2.3 billion. And so therein lies this big issue of that, and And now what we've done with that 6 billion budget is we've increased that 6 billion budget. I think we doubled that to 12 billion in 2014. But we've done nothing to Department of Transport and Department of Works. So
Now that it has been passed, tell us what you think of the 2014 national budget. Send us your comments and opinions simply by posting on our Facebook page or via Twitter. That's been Business PNG this week. Until next week, I'm Leon Durari. Bye for now.